Hey, what is up everyone? Tyler Ramsbey here, back with another video. Whether you're watching this live on Twitch as it happens right now or after the fact on YouTube, it is good to have you here. And when I was looking at Discord, I think we got Amoeba Man live with us again, so that's exciting. And what we are going to continue to do, what we're going to hopefully work our way through is hacking Hadoop on TryHackMe, and it's a free room. You can follow along if you'd like on Twitch real quick. I'm going to go ahead and share the link to this room for those of you on Twitch. And just so you know, if you weren't with us last night, you missed out on a lot. So you can, right now you can watch that previous stream here on Twitch. Otherwise it'll be posted on my YouTube channel. I think I have content coming out tomorrow, so I will release the first part of hacking Hadoop on Saturday and the second part on Sunday, because I think we will finish it tonight. But the reason I'm sharing that is I'm going to run through the first part really fast. So I spent way too much time offline trying to figure out this room, and it has been fascinating. And what Hadoop is it manages a data lake. So when you think of big data, Facebook is one of the questions that you'll see in here. Facebook has one of the largest data lakes, and this comes from a legit vulnerability or security assessment that Amoeba Man, who is the creator of this room, did. And so what you'll notice if you work through this room is it's much more realistic and less CTF-y. It's less like silly things to find and more of a realistic environment that you are going into. What makes it a little difficult to get started with, and I'll walk through this, is when Amoeba Man released this room, TryHackMe did not support full networks. I think part of it, he wasn't a staff member yet. He's now a staff member at TryHackMe. But so to connect to it, you have to launch the TryHackMe VPN. And then once your machine launches, then you download VPN for Hadoop. And I'll kind of walk you through that process. And where we left off last night was on task 6. Now I did complete this room, but one little trick is if you ever want to do a walkthrough of a room after completing it, this gear icon over here, you can just hit reset progress and it clears everything out. So we're not going to go through tasks 1 through 5. We're going to go through task 6, but I haven't even got connected. All I've done so far is I started the machine a while ago, because the machine can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to get fully launched. So I did that, but I haven't connected or anything. So I will walk through that connecting part real quick, and then we will see if I can jump to task 6. Once again, I'm gonna do that part rather quickly. I went through this enough times, and Amoeba Man knows from me bugging him on Discord that I like put out step by step how to do this in my little OneNote file over here. So the first thing, like any other TryHackMe room, is we need to get connected to the TryHackMe VPN. I'm guessing if you're watching this, you already know how to do that. So I'm gonna do that real quick.
Tyler, just quickly, I think it's still not yet sharing your screen.
Oh, shoot. Good catch. I'm too excited about the network. Thank you. There we go. Now you guys should be able to see my screen. I'm glad I didn't do the entire stream like just staring at my face. All right, let's go ahead and... one thing I've noticed, and Amoeba Man, you probably already knew this, I noticed to connect to the VPN. Well, first, here's the thing. If you guys have been working on this room last night, you have to re-download the VPN file after you launch the machine, because it's going to have a different IP address there. So don't try to use your old VPN file. The other thing I noticed is before the VPN works properly through the Hadoop VPN, is you have to add this IP address, where did my mouse go, to your Etsy host file. And it actually walks you through that on here. You can run this command, or you can just go ahead and edit Etsy hosts as long as you're logged in as root. So we'll do that real quick, and then we will get connected to the Hadoop VPN. We'll do that. I think I need to navigate to it from my attack machine real quick. Open Kali Linux back up. Open Chrome if it wants to open. There we go. Slowly loading. What up, J Money? If I'm saying your name right, 92020. Said, yo, good to have you. And if you don't mind me asking, J Money, you might be from Discord. There's quite a few of you online. If you mind just sharing like how you discovered this Twitch stream, I'd be curious just how you discovered it. But let me go ahead and download our task files real quick. That's going to be the VPN, and I think I probably have the old VPN here. Let's see. Yeah, I do. So let's go ahead and just remove that one, just so we don't get confused. Okay, and now we'll do OpenVPN again, just like the TryHackMe VPN, and we'll connect to this one. My name is... Oh, you are the one from LinkedIn. Okay, cool. Good to have you on Twitch. Welcome, welcome. And I believe you also joined Discord, so welcome to Discord as well, formally. I don't know if I welcomed you on Discord, but I'll do it right here on Twitch. And if you are on Discord, I'll just share this part of it real quick. If you ever want to join... Oh, look, it's like Inception. It's freaking out here. But as I stream on Twitch, I'm also in the box hacking channel on our Discord page. The only difference is if you join me on Discord, you can't hear my soft, peaceful background music. But the benefit is you can talk, and I do encourage that. Like if you're following along, if you're watching, if you have any type of question, you can either post it in text, or you can jump in here and talk like with your microphone. I don't mind being interrupted. I prefer that, just to build community and we can have some conversations. So welcome, welcome. And the other thing I do want to point out also before we get started, Amoeba Man has quite a few networks on TryHackMe. He has breaching AD, enumerating AD. There's a CVE one, which is about Active Directory certificate services, and walks through exploiting that. We have this hacking Hadoop one, and I feel like I'm missing a few. What am I missing, Amoeba Man? What other networks or rooms do you have on TryHackMe?
So you're only actually missing one from the published range, which is a room on explaining the Active Directory certificate template. So I think you did the CVE room, which is sort of a follow-up of the actual intended room, which is the one where it goes through the Spectre Ops white paper, talking about sort of the 8 privilege escalation vectors that can happen through Active Directory certificate templates, and you exploit sort of method number 1 there. So those are the published ones. There's new upcoming ones for other Active Directory networks and everything like that. But since joining, it's a little bit slower to get the content out because it's more rigorous and more quality assured and everything to make sure that it works more perfectly. So I like the process. It means it's good content that comes out when it comes out.
That is awesome. And all the rooms, I'm not just saying this because he's on Discord, they've been excellent. I've had other rooms on TryHackMe. I mean, all of them are good, but some of them are just buggy, to say the least. And what I loved about especially the AD networks, breaching AD and enumerating AD, is how smooth it went. Now, of course, there's a learning curve there. I learned a lot while I was doing it, but when there's an error, it's because I broke something and I wasn't reading fully most of the time. So I do encourage you guys, if you're new to AD, the neat thing about those rooms, especially breaching AD and enumerating AD, is they are networks, which means you connect to an actual Active Directory network, and it's free. The kind of catch there is if you don't have a subscription account on TryHackMe, you need to have a 7-day hacking streak to have access to those networks. But if you're subscribed, which I recommend, it's well worth the money, then it doesn't matter if you have a 7-day streak. You can jump into those networks, and I would encourage you to do so, to check those out. And there's also I'm looking at TCM Security. There's a TryHackMe Discord as well that I would encourage you to join. And I noticed, at least in the rooms that Amoeba Man has created, he's super active in there. If you do run into an issue, you leave a comment. I always see him responding to people pretty quick, which I think is neat to have the creator of the rooms being willing to troubleshoot and work through that stuff with you. But let's go ahead and try to get connected to here. And we are on. If you get this initialization sequence completed, we know that our VPN seems to be working. And so, like I said, this first part, I'm gonna run through it quick just so I can get us up to task 6 where we were at before. So I'll explain it a little bit as I go, but I'm not gonna go into a whole lot of detail on it. I just need to grab the right IP from here. We're gonna connect to this on port 8080 from our machine. We'll log in, get our credentials that we found at our last stream. And I need to turn numlock on. There we go. Open up this. Comment out that. We can comment out that. We can comment out that. And we are going to do a bind shell, which was new to me. Like I've obviously, when I'm in different classes, they talk about bind shells, at least occasionally they do. But I almost always, not almost always, I always use a reverse shell. So this threw me off a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and throw this bind shell on here. And then basically what this is doing is this opening port 4445 on this. So then what we can do is we can use netcat to connect to this machine, and it's going to give us a basic shell. You can see my command history here. Whoops. And you'll notice that we are the ZP user, and when you work through this room, you'll learn more about what that actually means. So we got that. We're going to authenticate as a yarn user, and once again, if you did not watch last night, you're going to be lost. That's okay. Watch last night and you'll get caught up. Authenticated to that. I'm going to create a quick shell, and Amoeba Man, the only thing I did differently is for these other shells, I did do reverse shells and they seemed to work instead of bind shells, just for it was easier for me to do it that way. The one thing I noticed, if you're following along after the fact, at least with this basic shell, and I was trying to give myself a better shell and I kept breaking it, but I was able to make it work with this basic shell. Just when you do echo, you need to specify the full path here. If you just do echo, it doesn't work. But if you do bin/echo, then you can echo stuff. And actually, I think we're at task 6 already. I need to slow down. Let me back up. Let's scroll down to task 6 just so I can pick up. What were you gonna say?
On that note, for the reverse shell,
yeah.
Yes, we did add the root so that reverse shells work, but I still keep it in there to use bind shells, simply because I think users don't have a lot of experience with bind shells, and there are actually legitimate cases. Exactly, there are legitimate cases where you want to use a bind shell, and the biggest example of that is actually when you're attacking Active Directory. A lot of times what you'll have is your malware that sort of creates that breach, and now you have a host that is exfiltrating data out for you. So that's through like a HTTP C2 channel or something like that. But now the rest of the hosts don't have internet access, so you can't actually use HTTP to basically get that information out, and then you're essentially using things like SMB beacons or TCP beacons and then linking them up, and those SMB and TCP beacons, they are essentially bind shells. So it's actually a worthwhile thing to learn for hacking networks.
So when I was going through, I think it was Throwback, we used Starkiller, and essentially we installed an agent on our victim, and then that agent of course pinged back to our Starkiller, which is our command and control. That was essentially a bind shell, right? Because it's pinging back to Starkiller. Am I understanding that correctly?
So that first one that you have there, that might still be a reverse connection, in the sense that you are deploying the agent and then it's connecting back to you. But when you're deploying agents further into the network through sort of like pivoting, those type of agents, if they connect back to your primary agent, then that can be a bind shell. Especially when you're using tools like Cobalt Strike. I know that's a little bit more sort of like paid hacking tools and everything like that. But essentially what that will do is it will open a SMB share on the victim computer, and then essentially what you can do is you can take one of your other beacons and you can just basically link to it, and that link will be a bind. So it's all in the finer details. It can still be a reverse connection, but a lot of times it's actually a bind connection. And what's really nice about those is, let's say for instance the blue team kicks out your primary HTTP reverse connection beacon. Once you get another one deployed on the network, you can just re-link to all of the bind shells, because the bind shell didn't actually get killed. It was only the HTTP one.
Interesting. And okay, so that makes sense, because even when I do my reverse shells on the Hadoop network, I noticed they almost time out, for lack of a better word. So it takes a while, but all of a sudden I'll just lose my shell, my reverse shell. And I suppose if I did a bind shell, that probably wouldn't happen, I'd assume, unless it's something else happening in the background. But I had it happen multiple times where my shell kind of times out. One of my shells, but my initial shell that I had, my initial bind shell that I had, is still there. And so what I've been doing is once I get the reverse shell, I basically put everything in temp and then use my original shell, or my bind shell. Once I get a reverse shell, I always go back to my bind shell and do everything from there because it's smoother. So that makes sense as you explain it, some of the things I was experiencing.
Cool, but yes, reverse shells do work. We're just not advertising that at the start of the network so that users just sort of take that learning curve of bind shells.
I see. Okay, well, let's dive into task 6. Once again, if you're confused on tasks 1 through 5, don't worry, I was too, and Amoeba Man patiently guided us through it last night. So go ahead and get caught up on there if you haven't. But let's dive into task 6. All right, even though we now have access to the data lake, we still have not performed privilege escalation. We'll need to do something in order to gain full control of the cluster. After authenticating to the data lake, things start to get interesting. You see, even though the data lake may look like a normal Unix file system, in terms of authentication and access control, things work a tad bit different when it comes to Hadoop. And I think we covered, I'm actually going to scroll through, I believe we covered most of this stuff. I believe I read through this on my last stream, so I'm not going to read through this because we got this, which is yarn, and then we did get this as well in the HDFS home directory. Where we were stuck last night, where we kind of left off, was this one, because to get to the user's home directory referring to this yarn user, that's where we have to do a shell. And so that's what I was doing here. So the proper way, it sounds like, is a bind shell. So you can give it a shot with a bind shell. I'll do a reverse shell on this first one, and maybe the second one will try a bind shell. But you can kind of see what I'm doing. All I'm doing is echoing this standard reverse shell syntax right here. I'm doing port 1337. So while I'm thinking of it, we'll go like that. So we're listening on there. And all I'm doing is creating a file called shell1.sh in the temp directory. So we got it there. And then the next thing that we are going to do is we have to navigate to the bin area for the HDFS stuff. And that is at cd user local Hadoop 2.7.7. And if you do go through this room on your own, there is documentation that you read about attacking Hadoop that explains some of this process. You do just need to make sure you update the version numbers and some other syntax just to match what we're doing here. If I navigate to bin and ls, what we're going to be executing in order to run commands is HDFS. And what you saw me do earlier is I impersonated with key tabs, which I never even heard of, so I did this room, but impersonated the yarn user using key tabs. So when I run any commands with HDFS, I'm no longer running it as my original user, but I'm running it as yarn, which is essentially how we're gonna get a shell as yarn. But the first thing we need to do is we need to just create an empty file. And the way you run commands is HDFS like this, of course, ./DFS, you always do that as well. And then if we wanted to like list something, it's just -ls, and we can go like that to list the root. And you'll notice we have temp and we have user there. And so what we're gonna do is same thing, DFS. The only thing different, and Amoeba Man made note of this, is it's not just a touch command to create an empty text file, it's touch Z out of all things. So we're going to do that. We're going to create it in temp, and I'm just going to call it first.text. And now you'll notice if we go ahead and list that out, it should show that the file was created by yarn, but we are ZP. So once again, we impersonated the yarn user. So when we run those commands, it's running it as yarn. So now that we have this, I'm gonna copy and paste the command that I'm gonna run because it's a longer command, but I'll do my best to walk through it, and Amoeba Man can correct me in the spots that I totally screwed up. So what we are doing is we're running Hadoop jar, that's just Java, right? And we're running the streaming, Hadoop streaming. All of that is standard. It comes from the attacking Hadoop that's linked to in the room. We have this input, and what's unique about this is it's dash input, and it says you have to specify a non-empty file, right? So if I change this to second, and maybe I should break it first actually. Let me delete this. I want to show you guys what happens if you do it incorrectly. And since I don't have a good interactive shell, I'm gonna hold my delete button. Okay, we'll just let it do that. We'll break it for a second. What I'm gonna do is instead of first.txt, because I know that exists, I'm gonna show you what happens if we do it with a file that doesn't exist yet. So we'll use second.txt. I'm just gonna update it on my notepad here real quick. Although you guys can't see my notepad. So if I go ahead and paste this in, now second.txt does not exist, and it's gonna throw an error because we're trying to do it that way. But we have output, and this is just something, this is where it gets confusing. So this has to be a file that's empty but does exist. The output has to be a file that does not exist. So temp.1 is a directory that does not exist. This could be anything you want. You could put kitty cat there, it doesn't really matter. We have .mapper, we're specifying the name of our shell file. Reducer is none, that just stays none. And now we're specifying the file on our victim machine where our shell is located. And if you remember, we echoed it out to temp shell.1sh. Background just means to run it as a background job. But because this file does not exist, it's gonna throw an error. It says streaming command failed, input path does not exist. That's second.txt. Now, what does exist is the first.txt. So if I update that to first.txt, rerun the command, it should work. I hope. Fingers crossed. I never started my break timer either. I'm gonna start my timer. Well, let's run this, and then I'll start my timer. Boom. So here's the other thing that has thrown me off a few times when I'm working through this room. Whoops, wrong one. I'm gonna get my 25-minute timer. I like to work in 25-minute intervals and take 5-minute breaks. But one thing that's thrown me off as I've been working through this room is when you do a shell, it takes a while. And Amoeba Man explained this on Discord. Essentially, Yarn, we're sending a job to Yarn, which is service, which I know this doesn't make sense if you don't watch the stuff from last night, but we aren't executing ourselves, we're telling Yarn to execute it, so there's a little bit of processing time there. Did I explain that right, Amoeba Man? Did I screw that up, or does that make sense how I've explained this up to this point?
Oh, it's fairly good. Yarn is just basically your resource manager. So you're telling it, hey, I have a new job, and you're essentially pushing that job out. But then there's a lot of things that happen with Yarn sort of like first polling all of your active nodes and seeing how busy they are. And then it's sort of like asking, right, I have a job. Then there's the first part of the job is that reduction part that we skip. But and that's the power of the data lake, is it's reducing the job into essentially smaller things that can be executed on multiple different nodes. And then basically it gets scheduled, and then the node still has to accept the job and everything like that. So that's why the shell that you're getting is not sort of like this instantaneous thing, because a lot of the process is out of your hands once you schedule the job for action.
Much better way of explaining it. I'm still trying to understand, so that's super helpful to hear that. So if we jump over here, you'll see that we were able to get a shell. Who am I? We are Yarn. So let's go ahead and just grab the flag that it's asking us to do. So let me throw this to the side, grab this. My computer is being slow. I don't know if I'm just running too much stuff, but come on, computer, I believe in you. So we did this one in the last stream. I'm not going to grab that one, but we will grab this flag 5. So if we cd the home, and if we ls, remember we are Yarn, so we're going to cd the Yarn, ls cat flag 5.txt. The little kitty got its ball of yarn. Yes, it did. Okay, so now we are going to switch things up, but I'll just read through this and I'll do my best to walk us through it. So congrats, you were able to impersonate another user. Well, what's better than a ball of yarn? Well, owning the yarn farm, of course. Now that we have some more permissions, it is finally time to herd up all the farm animals and take control. There is one peculiar key tab remaining, and this key tab belongs to the Node Manager service. This is not a service mentioned at the start, since this is a service that you normally never interact with directly. It is a little shy and stays behind the scenes. However, it is truly the master orchestrator. You want to create a new node? Got to speak to the manager. Do you want to update containers? Got to speak to the manager. Do you want to switch to the secondary name node? Got to speak to the manager. Do you want to run a job? Got to speak to the manager. Essentially, behind the scenes, this service ensures that all nodes are up and running. If a node becomes unhealthy, the node manager will inform the relevant services like resource manager to distribute the load of that node onto others in order to improve the node's health or get it ready for retirement. It is usually behind the scenes, as organizations usually make use of what's called datalake management solutions. These are applications like Ambari or Cloudera. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we'll pretend like I am. These applications provide a centralized platform that helps control, manage, and deploy your cluster. However, they are usually just wrapping the node manager and resource manager services. With all of this being said, if you ever want to control the entire cluster, this would be the service to hunt for. Using your newly acquired permissions, try to impersonate the node manager service. First, just from a data lake perspective, then also from an OS perspective. And I do want to share with you guys my notes. I'm not going to go through all these permissions because Amoeba Man explained this in the last stream. So once again, I encourage you to check out that last stream. But this is some of what we did in the last stream as we were comparing different groups that our users were in. And what sets apart our Yarn is he is in the same group as the node manager. So because we went from ZP over to Yarn, now we should be able to impersonate our node manager using very similar syntax that we have used up to this point. So I'm going to grab my notebook. I'll just pull it over here and I'll walk you through a little bit of the syntax. As I glance at my notes, blah, 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 scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Okay, now that we are Yarn, what we're going to do is we're going to copy the key tab for the node manager to our temp folder, just because I've learned it works better this way. So if we do cp etc security key tabs nm.service.keytab/temp, there we go. And let's just change that so that we don't have any issues accessing it with our other shell in case we need to do that. Oh, I typed it wrong. Yep, it's not server, it's service. So let's try that again. Okay, now we could even go back to our original shell. I'm just gonna name these real quick. We'll just call this ZP. I think that was the name of the user. And here's Yarn. Perfect. I should look at what are we doing here. So we need to get the value of the flag associated with the node manager's HDFS home directory. So we'll do that once we impersonate it. So we could, we'll just do it from here. Can I clear? Okay, so if we go to temp and ls, we should see our node manager service.keytab. Now, the first thing you need to do before you can impersonate the service, and you may remember this from last night, is we need to list, I can't even think of what the word's called. Is it the, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. What are we listing with now I can't even think of the command. It's not.
So it's the principles. Yes.
The principles. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. The principles.
And it's K-list.
Yes. So the way we would do that, once you navigate to it, you could also do this when it's in the security key tabs folder if you're logged in as Yarn. But since we put in the temp directory, we can do it with really any user since we did the chmod command. So it's klist -k. And we're gonna go to temp, and then it's nm.service.keytab, like that. So we have this here. Now this is important because in order to impersonate this user, we need that. And so the command that we're going to run to impersonate the user is very similar to what we've already run, and it's the kinit command. So if we do kinit like that, and we're going to type, well, we'll copy and paste just because I know I'm going to type it wrong, the principal there, like that, and then -k -v for verbose, so it says that we were authenticated, -t like that, and then we're just going to specify the key tab, so nm.service like that. I think I did the syntax right, and it says we're authenticated to Kerberos, so I think I'm already, no, I'm not in the bin, so we have to navigate back to the bin. So if we go cd user local Hadoop 2.7.7/bin like that, clarify that we're there, perfect. And so we need to get node manager's home directory flag. We should be able to do that now because we have impersonated the home, the node manager. So if you remember, it's hdfs dfs. First we'll list user just so we can see where it's at. And here's our different users. And of course we want to do our node manager. So let's do that again. hdfs dfs list user node manager. And we have flag 6 right there. So as you can guess, hdfs dfs cat user node manager flag 6.text. And we got that flag. What is the value of the flag associated with the node manager's OS home directory? So here we have to go ahead and try to get another shell. And when we get this shell, we are running as the node manager. So we will no longer be yarn. We will become the node manager, which gives us a lot of privileges, which you guys will see as long as I do this properly. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to redo what we did, but name it a different shell. So we'll call it shell2. Just going to copy the command from over here. And let's go ahead and cat to make sure it showed up. There it is, and you can see we're on port 1338. Actually, I don't need to be root to do this on my own machine, but this is the one that always took a little bit, so we'll have to have some patience on this one. And so we're going to be nm for this tab, node manager, hopefully. So we echoed that out. We also have to create a file, if you remember right. Touch Z, and we'll call it second.txt. Okay, and now let's just verify that it does say it's owned by our node manager user. And there it is, second.txt is created by node manager, but remember, who am I? I am lowly ZP. So once again, we're using key tabs to impersonate the node manager. And when we run the commands through HDFS, it doesn't know the difference. It thinks we are the almighty node manager. So we're going to do a very, very similar command as what we did before. I'm looking at it over here just because it's not easy for me to edit once I pull it in with my terrible shell. Hadoop user jar. Actually, I'll just pull it over here so you guys can see it while I go through it. Here are my notes that I've been taking throughout the day. So if I scroll down through here, here is the command that we are going to run. Hadoop jar. You can see it's very similar input, and I have fourth right there. We're gonna call it second.txt. Output temp4, that should be fine. Shell2.sh, that is what we named it. I believe it should be there. Let's go ahead and give this command a shot and see if we are able to get shell as the almighty node manager. So far, so good. Now, this one is going to take a little bit. So what is the value of the flag associated with the node manager's OS home directory? Okay, we can't do that yet until, oh, look at that. That was fast. We are node manager. So let's go to home. We're just collecting the flags, y'all. And if you are doing this for the first time and you think I'm going fast, I assure you it has taken me hours and bugging Amoeba Man constantly to figure this out. So I'm not as smart as it looks right now. It's just because I've done this over and over again. So if you feel stuck, don't feel bad. And often what I do when I'm stuck is if I can find a walkthrough, I'll watch it up until the point where I'm no longer stuck and then go back and dive into it. So you can do it that way. Otherwise, you can follow along the entire time. I always like, when I first started doing CTFs, I used to feel like I lost if I looked up a walkthrough. But what I've learned is the goal is to learn, right? So if I've learned something new at the end, that's a success. Whether I had to follow a walkthrough the entire time or look something up, as long as you learn something, that is the goal. That is a success. So the goal is to learn. Now, this service is peculiar. If it can't directly access the other nodes, it probably needs to be able to invoke privilege commands. You're going to be very disappointed in the root privilege escalation path, but it is as real as it can get. You see, to figure out exactly what commands are required to execute as node manager is a massive pain. So painful that large data lake providers often even recommend this glaringly bad misconfiguration. Your next flag awaits you in root's home directory. And this actually happens in Windows environments as well in a similar way. So without giving away too much, my day job is very much a blue team job. And I was helping a vendor set up something for identity type management. And what they told us, so you have to have a service account, because kind of like this, a service account, it was an account in our Active Directory in order to have certain privileges to do the things that needed to be done. And they told us to make our service account a domain administrator, which, if you know anything about security, that's a terrible idea, because we need to follow the principle of least privilege even for a non-human service account. Because if that service account is hijacked as a domain admin, they own the entire Active Directory structure. So it's not just in these data lakes that are hard to configure. And I'm not a pen tester. I'm not a red teamer. Not yet. I want to one day be, but I'm guessing, just Amoeba Man, how often do you run into like misconfigurations like that in your actual job? Is that often that you see things like that?
I think it's getting a little bit better, but I would say 99% of the times that's what happens. So we used to always have like a running joke in the NetSec team that it's DA before lunch on the first day of an assessment, and we've gotten some bad ones. Sometimes it was DA before the first coffee break. So and the number one thing that happened wrong there is essentially not following the principle of least privilege, and just having that one or two service accounts that are part of the domain administrators group. And the worst one is actually the blue team tooling. So there was a time when tools like CyberArk, for instance, one of its scanners would basically do an interactive logon with the account that it was using to scan, which means that those credentials now live in memory. So basically, an organization would scan their entire environment with that thing, and it would just literally drop DA creds on every single machine in the entire network. So that, and some of the vulnerability scanners from Beyond Trust used to do that as well. They fixed it, but it was the best thing ever. You just wait for the Monday morning 9 o'clock security scans, and then you're a DA. So it was quite fun.
That is awesome, man. That's good to hear some real world perspective. That's fun stuff. So when you get access to a Linux system, even if I just follow my notes here, and I have Linux privilege escalation here, we're not going to do kernel exploits. But the first thing I always try, and what I would encourage you to try, is sudo -l. The list, can we run anything as super user? And watch this, sudo -l. We can run everything as the super user with no password required. So what is the value of the flag in the root user's home directory? We could do sudo Well, let's just list the users. If we go there, we have, oh, let's do sudo ls root. There's our flag, sudo cat root flag 8.txt. This has got to be the saddest root for escalate ever. Love it. Wonder what the hint is for this. Basic will get you your answer. Yes, it will get you your answer. What is the value in the root user's HDFS home directory? So remember, we have to impersonate our root user. So we're following a very similar process as we did before. Just to grab that key tab, I always forget. Let me jump back to my boxes. I can't ever remember by memory where the key tabs is. etc security key tabs. So what we're gonna do is sudo cp etc security key tabs root.service.keytab, I believe. The temp, let's see if that works. It did. So sudo change mod 777 temp root.service.keytab. Now, if we go back to our lowly ZP user and go there and ls, it would do lsla. Oh, it's gonna look a little bit bad just because of I have this small screen here, but you can see we have our root.service key tab. Everyone can read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute, because we set those permissions so that we could access it from our lowly ZP user right here. And so we're gonna go ahead and impersonate that, but before we do that, we need to run the list. See, K-list is what I'm looking for, if I remember right. I always forget it. K-list-K, and then we should be able to temp root.service.keytab. I think I did the syntax right. I did, so there's the principal that we are looking for, and then we can do the kinit command, and we're gonna copy that principal. Okay, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. You don't want to have a space when you copy stuff because it likes to do that to you. 5 minutes left before our first break, y'all. Technically, I took forever to start my timer, so it should probably be right now, but let's go ahead and get this done first. Kinit root.example.com -k-v-t, same exact syntax as before, root.service.keytab. And we authenticated. So now if we cd to user local, I have to look at my notes to remember the exact path. There we go, user/local Hadoop. You know, you think after doing this over and over again, I'd eventually have that memorized, but I do not. HDFS, and if we just do DFS and let's do touch Z to temp, and let's just call it root.txt for fun. And now, if we do HDFS, DFS, ls, temp, we should see root.txt hopefully owned by root. There it is, root.txt. It is owned by root. We have impersonated the root user, but it is not done yet. Let's go ahead and grab this flag, I suppose, and then we'll take our 5-minute break. And then there's some cool pivoting that we're going to do in just a little bit to get onto another network. But let's go ahead and HDFS, DFS, cat, user, root, flag9.txt. I think. Is it going to work? Yep. Nothing can stop you now. What was the hint for that one? Hunt for roots key tab. Got it. We did it. Okay. I think that's a good break point. Let's take a 5-minute break and jump back on here. I'm going to go grab my timer here. Just stop the timer. Check out Twitch. All right. I'm going to do a 5-minute break. And for those of you on Discord, what up, Nate? I don't even think I saw that you were here. Oh, I don't know if you're talking, but I can't hear you. It's camera shy. All right. Anyways, as Nate fixes his audio, I'm going to do a 5-minute break. I am going to step away from my computer. So if you guys talk on Discord, just know that they'll hear you on Twitch. But I'll be back in 5 minutes.
My audio working now?
Yep, can hear you now.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Get Twitch pulled up on the side. And we are going to start surfing the data lake. So, you finally got root. What's better than one root? Two of them, right? We still have not answered that one burning question. How do node manager and resource manager actually join these nodes together, both for storage and processing capabilities? Yes, what you will find here is a misconfiguration, but try to fix this issue at your own peril through the use of pseudo wrappers. It is much simpler to just protect the root user and accept the risk. Once you become root on a single node, 99% of the time it is over at this point. Using basic enumeration from your newly rooted position, you should be able to authenticate to the secondary cluster node at point 4. Your last flag awaits you in the root directory on that host. And you know what happened during our 5-minute break? My shell died. So we might have to get the shell back, or we could do it the proper way. Let's see, is Amoeba Man still on here? He is. We could try to get a bind shell instead. Change it up a little bit. This is what I haven't done. So we can watch me stumble through getting a bind shell. And I think that might be better, because what I've noticed, even when I was working on this offline, my shells would just randomly die. Like my yarn shell's dead here, my node manager shell's here, but my original bind shell is still alive and well. So let's try to get a bind shell, and the way we're going to do that, see, here's what I've noticed. Even if you search for like bind shell cheat sheet, look at this, it's all reverse shells. At least I'm pretty sure this is. Yeah, reverse shell cheat sheet. So we're gonna get a bind shell. I know we can use Python. Can we use bash for a bind shell? I don't know if you can. Maybe. Do we have SoCan? Look at this sweet find trick that I learned from Amoeba Man. You find everything in the root directory, you pipe it to grep, and then you can look for whatever you want. And it gives this really nice interface where everything runs through the screen. But it does the trick. Okay, while that freaks out over there, let's look at this. Nope, that's a reverse shell. It's because that's the attacker IP import. We want to do a bind shell. I think it's a forward shell. The shell allows you to maintain using pipes. We could do it with netcat for sure. I just don't know if netcat is actually on this machine. Here's Python. Python might be the way to do it. Is that what you would recommend, Amoeba Man, is Python?
Python is the most surefire way, definitely. Because you know already through the compromise of Zeppelin that the Python bind shell there remains stable. So that's you should technically be able, you can take that one and then hopefully it's going to work. I'm probably going to leave for work in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So do the bind shell at your own peril at that point, but you should get it sorted if you just get that one into your shell file. You should be sorted.
Sounds good. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create the shell file on my attack machine, and obviously it died here, so we'll just change this to terminal. And there's going to be kind of a spoiler here, but it's fine. You'll notice a little file there called IDRSA that might give you a hint of what is to come next. And I will say putting it on my attack machine didn't actually do anything for me. But let's gedit shell3.sh. And I think if we shebang it, bin/bash. Now we're gonna have to probably import OS. I don't know if I'm even doing that right. I should look at, if we look at this essentially showing us how we're doing it, because we need to run it as a .sh, but we want to also run Python. Would we import OS? No.
So just remember on
Yeah.
test node here in Zeppelin, right, that's already in a Python interpreter shell. So that would be similar to you typing like literally the word Python, and it drops you into that Python interpreter one. At this point, we are not in a Python interpreter. You're still sort of like in a bash session, as your shebang says there. So you want to execute the command of Python now from bash. Now, the only thing I would perhaps recommend is going on your Zeppelin shell exactly and doing the full path to Python. So I think it's usable in Python, but it's always good just to confirm with a which Python. And then that should now execute Python. And what you're telling that bind shell with the -c is you're basically saying Python execute the following code, and then you can see there's our import for socket, OS, and sub-processes. And then we start a socket, which is basically just going to start a OS system sub-process call for bin sh as our bind shell. So that should technically work. One thing that I'd recommend that I do in the past is just before you run that Python command, you can have something that like touches a file to the temp directory. So the nice thing about that is you at least know whether or not it was able to touch something to the temp directory. And again, maybe just use the full file path for touch as well, because we don't know if that's going to give us any issues. And yeah, then hopefully once you see that file in the temp directory, you know the bind shell is executing, and you should get ready to connect to it.
Good stuff. Thank you.
And yeah, and you did change your port. I just made sure 446 because you already have something on 445.
Yeah, so if you guys are watching following after the fact, just make sure you update that. It was 445, and I made sure I caught that part of it at least. So we have this. Let's go ahead and save it. Now the question is, and if you're new to some of this, this will be your question, but you'll get this figured out pretty quick. How do we get it from our attack machine to our victim machine? And it's a lot easier than you think. Now there's multiple ways you can do this. In my experience, the easiest way is just to host a Python web server, which once again sounds more complex than it really is. You can do it with Python 3-m for module, HTTP server, and then just specify your port. We'll do port 80 just for ease of use, and I'll show you how slick this is. You always have to host this from within the directory that your file is at, but now that we did that, on here, where am I even at on here? Let's go to temp. And we are there. And now if we wget, and remember, connecting as if we're connecting to a website. So we're going to type the IP of our attack machine. And what did I call it? Shell 3? Shell 3, yep. Shell 3.sh. I don't know if you need a .o for output, maybe. And, oh, maybe you didn't need that because I put 2 there. But you can see we have shell 3.sh there. Let's just cat it. Oh, that's not right. Is it this one? Oh, so it's, for some reason, shell 3.sh.1. That's not going to work for us. So let's remove shell 3.sh. And let's move shell 3.sh.1 to shell 3.sh. And now let's cat shell 3.sh. There. That's what we want. So hopefully it will touch it-work.txt. It will create that in the temp folder so we know it worked. And then it's going to open up port 4446. So then we should be able to just netcat into that. We can close this now. Netcat into that port on that IP. Works in my head. I did not do this offline. So let's see if it works in practice. Let's go ahead and edit our command for our shell. I'm going to scroll down because we'll use a very similar command here. We're going to use our Hadoop jar blah 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 input second.txt. Let's call that root.txt. I know I made that one as root, so I know that exists. I know it hasn't been used. Root.txt output temp4. I think that's fine, but let's change that just in case. And we're going to change this to shell 3.sh, reducer none, and shell 3.sh let's give that a shot. Oops. Copy that, and I'm going to pull this over here on my other monitor. Because before we can do that, we of course have to get to the bin directory for our Hadoop, whatever it's called stuff. So let's jump over there. Like I said, I always have to look it up. You think I'd have it memorized. Local Hadoop -2.7.7/bin. There we are, and let's just hdf dfs ls temp. Let's remember what we all have there for files. We have root.txt, and we should still be impersonated as root. So let's give this a shot. Did I already have this copied? Look at this one more time. Hadoop jar running Java input root.txt, which does exist. We see it right there. It's empty output. That doesn't exist, which is good. Shell3.sh is our shell. It's located in temp shell3.sh. So please no errors. Ah, sweet. Okay. Now it probably takes a little bit. So let's go to cd temp. And we should eventually see it worked. We'll give it a little bit, and then we'll give it a shot. In the meantime, I guess I didn't even know if I was supposed to get a flag. Oh nope, so we're gonna pivot right away. So I can explain some of this pivoting because it would take a while to do this, and you probably saw it here, ID RSA. And so a few things I want to make note of. First, the proper way to do this is you're gonna do an nmap scan on here. You're gonna have to scan all the ports, because what you'll soon discover is it is hosting SSH, but if you just try to do an SSH connection, it's gonna fail because it's not hosting SSH on the common port for it, which is port 22. It's hosting SSH on port 2122, I believe, 2122, if my notes and my memory serve me correct. And so on port 2122. And the other thing you'll notice once you have, well, we had it already. When you have shell as the node manager, you can run sudo without any password, and you can run on any command. So one thing you should do, just part of normal enumeration on a box, especially if you're called to pivot to another box, you can look for any SSH files, namely an ID RSA. So you'll see this once we get access. But basically, you would be able to do a find that, our sweet trick that Amoeba Man taught us, grep ID RSA. I'm assuming you could also do .ssh, something like that. Or another way you do this is if you run linpeas. This is one of the enumeration that linpeas automatically does. It looks for SSH config files, and linpeas will also find this. So you'd be able to find this in multiple ways. What's going to take you a little bit is just that initial nmap scan to see what ports are open and finding that uncommon SSH port. So you'll just have to trust me that it's there. Otherwise, feel free to do the nmap scan. I just don't feel like redoing that process. But that is how I initially got to that. Now let's jump back to ZP. Let's do ls. It's not there yet. Let's just try to connect. Though it was port 446, maybe port 446. Yes, it was. So if we netcat, I need to grab the IP. I think it's 172, 23.0.3 446. It's not open yet. And this is the part where, when I was doing this offline, I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. I even ended up messaging Amoeba Man like, bro, what the heck am I missing? God, I feel like I'm doing this right. And then it's like a few seconds later, I messaged him back saying, never mind, it started working. But that was after waiting for quite some time. And I thought, clearly I broke something. So we'll hang out. We'll wait. Open Discord. Nate, did you get your mic working? I'll go ahead and Amoeba Man.
I don't know, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So Just maybe on that one quickly for that bind shell and all of that. Hopefully that one is going to work. Otherwise, you can go back to something like a reverse shell. Just before I have to pack up, I'll join on my phone, but then I obviously won't see the screen or anything like that.
Sure. Appreciate that.
With the SSH one, I'd love for you to try when you're back into the SSH thing, just run SSH 172.23.0.4. That should work even if the ports are different, because essentially what happens is Hadoop registers SSH to a different port, and then technically all nodes should agree on what the port is for SSH. So I'm pretty sure if you're in root context, if you just, nothing else, SSH 172.23.0.4, it should pick up the key and it should run with it and then essentially log you in. If that doesn't do the trick, then there's some mismatch between my two Hadoop nodes there. But then you can also just specify the port of -P. You can always specify what private key it's going to use, but because it's ID RSA, that's the default key that it will pick up and run with if you try to do SSH as root.
Okay, good to know. I did a little more work than what was needed. And part of it is I was trying to do it for my local machine. And obviously that doesn't work for, I'm sure, multiple reasons. Like I tried to just steal the ID RSA key, put it on my machine, and I was trying to SSH as root on that IP, specifying the ID RSA key and specifying the port, but that doesn't work.
So that should work. The reason it doesn't is because it's very, very outdated systems.
Okay, gotcha. So my reasoning was correct then. I was thinking that would work, yes. So I grabbed that right away.
No, it would work. It's just there's cipher mismatches and everything, because creating a stable Hadoop and a stable Hadoop in Docker is such a massive pain. I had to go specifically for version 2.7.7, and it's running on a really, really outdated CentOS machine. So that's what worked, which is why sort of there's a cipher mismatch, because even Kali doesn't have those old ciphers.
That makes sense. And my bind shell doesn't want to play nice with me, so I'll let it keep running, because honestly even the reverse shell took some time. But while it runs, I'm just going to get a reverse shell ready as well, just so we can try both and we'll see which one works first. So to get a reverse shell, we've already done this multiple times. I'm just changing it over in my notes, and I will paste it on here and explain what we're doing real quick. So same thing as before, we're going to echo. And this command is your standard reverse shell. Make sure you change the IP, which I already did. We're going to do 1339 now, and we're going to call it shell4.sh. In the meantime, we'll set up our netcat listener on that same port, 1339. Let's do that. Let's cat shell4.sh. Well, I don't know why I did it that way. There we go. That looks good to me. Now we have to jump back. My notes are broken. cd user local Hadoop 2.7.7 bin. Perfect. And then we're going to seek to run that same command. We do have to create a new text file. dfs touch z temp, and we'll just call it root2.txt. I think my syntax is right there. I never started my break timer. We're gonna have a really long work session here. Let me start my break timer quick. Start. I'm about to not take any breaks though, because then all my stuff dies. Yo, Nate, we finally got our first bot. Someone told us to buy followers and viewers on some store website. On Twitch. We should go buy some viewers. We'll raise money to buy viewers, because that sounds like a fantastic idea. Okay.
Sorry, I was just grabbing my credit card quick. Do I need to read the numbers off on live, or how do we do this?
Yep, I think that's how you do it. If you just read your numbers off and then the security code on the back and the expiration date, I'm sure with the excellent customer service that person will provide, they'll just snag that for us and make sure we're starting tomorrow. We'll have millions of followers. We'll give TCM Security and OSCP a run for their money. Start our own certification. Okay, I got distracted by that message on Twitch. What was I doing? I was going to... Did I create the file? Okay, yeah. I was going to check and make sure it was created. And make sure it's owned by root. Root2.txt. Yep, okay. So far, so good. We have root. Let me go and grab this command here. I'm going to edit it a little bit, and I'll just pull it over here so those of you on stream can kind of see how I'm editing it here. So here's our command. We're going to change this to root2.txt. Output, we'll change this to temp. We'll just change it to root2 as well. We'll keep that the same. Remember, this has to be something that doesn't exist. This has to exist. We called it... I don't actually remember what I called it. Shell4.sh. Okay, got it. We called it shell4.sh. Shell4.sh. Let's go ahead and copy this out. Did I have my Nightcat listener? Yeah. Please no errors, please no errors, please no errors. Good, no errors. And now let's see if we ls temp again. Wonder if our other command ran yet. I don't see it. HI should be there. Let's just try to connect to it. Netcat 172.23.0.3 4445. Hope it's thinking. It didn't fail right away. Let's... Or I just broke my Kali Linux box and the whole thing froze. One of the two happened. Do I still have commands here? Okay. Okay. I don't think I did the syntax wrong. Oh, I'm using the wrong... Okay, hold up. That was the wrong port. That was the port we already have, so it's just probably confused. It was 4446 that I changed it to, I believe. And I got connection refused. So, we might have to wait for our reverse shell here. Is there anything we can do in the meantime? I don't think so. We'll let this do its thing. Nate, how are you following along right now? Like, are you doing Hadoop or are you working on something else?
I'm working on Hadoop, and I'm pretty far behind, but I'm catching up slowly.
Anything you're stuck on at all? Or are you good?
I'm kind of stuck, I guess. So I'm trying to get back into borrowing one of the key tabs. So I think I got it working now, and I'm just trying to remember what command comes next. I think I'm masquerading as the ZP Hadoop Docker principal, but I don't remember what to do next.
You're automatically the ZP one, because that's the account. Like if you do who am I, does it say ZP?
Yes.
So you don't have to impersonate that one. So what you need to impersonate is yarn, I think, is the next step.
Well, that would make sense.
So, yeah, to impersonate yarn is the syntax. The first thing you need to do is get the principal for yarn. So that is that K list right here. So if you do klist-k and then you specify the key tab, it should give that to you. And then to impersonate them, it's k init, and this syntax is the same every time. You just have to change the principal and the key tab location, and then it should get authentication successful. I can even send these over as well, just see if the syntax. What is my cat doing? You guys hear crunching in the background? My cat's eating a mouse or something.
No.
Alright, good. I don't know why it sends it as a picture. Freaking OneNote is so stupid.
Yeah. I hate OneNote for that. I think if you do Control-Shift-V, it pastes this text. I could be wrong.
Why wouldn't it just do that by default? This is text. This isn't a picture.
This is Microsoft. Everything
So if I do
is like a macro or an image or.
Yeah, you're right. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
All right, let's pull this back up. Do we have a shell? Not yet. And here, if I remember right, root took a long time for some reason to get that shell. Maybe I should try to get the shell as a node manager, because I could do all of this as node manager technically. I might try that. Let's give that a shot. So I'm gonna impersonate node manager.
So just a note on that one, why it might also be taking a bit of time, is this is technically a single node cluster. So it might be that the job, the job schedule is currently sort of like completely full with all of the other jobs that were running there. So maybe sort of like there's a infinite loop or something like that that's currently happening with your with that bind shell. So the next job is not yet been scheduled for execution because that other job hasn't yet timed out or anything like that. So the only two fixes I can recommend, and I mean this is not a problem on a real Hadoop data lake because you'll have multiple nodes, so another one will pick up the job. But again, we are simulating that. So you can either, if you just want to flush sort of like fully the queue, what you can do is you can just basically terminate the instance and restart it. I would just suggest before you do that, copy over sort of like the node manager and the root users key tab, so you don't have to restart those type of bind shell jobs. Or of course, which you already have that ID RSA, so you can just sort of do your Python HTTP server wget thing to get that ID RSA for Zeppelin so that you can complete it. And then hopefully at some point, the queue is going to realize that job that's currently in there is not going to execute, so it will time out, and then the next job will schedule.
That makes a lot of sense.
So single node cluster problems, unfortunately, which again is a problem of the simulation. Yeah.
Sure. You know, that makes a lot of sense, because even today when I was working on it, it would be something like this, and I would think it's not working, and it would be like, man, I don't know, 20 minutes later, I look back and all of a sudden there's a shell there. Like, I don't know how long it took, but it definitely took some time. So that makes sense if there's like a queue and it's stuck in the queue and it eventually is going to push through, because I bet if my bind shell doesn't work, eventually that'll fail, and then my reverse shell will pop off. Okay, I see. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you're trying to follow along and you want to do this properly, what I would suggest to you is you can try the bind shell, but as you can see, when I tried it, it seems to have broken the queue. If you just go straight to a reverse shell, this is how I did it initially. So if you follow that second process I did, which you're following along, you may have already done the bind shell, you may have already broke your box anyways, so you can just hang out and wait. Otherwise, you can restart the box, give it 5 minutes, go outside, get some fresh air, do something else for 5 minutes while it starts back up. But anyways, a reverse shell, when I was going through it for the 15th time, seemed to do the trick. So you can do it that way. I do have the ID RSA file, and I already explained a little bit of how to do that privilege escalation path. So we'll try it that way. Let's go Let's turn this into our web server. cd TryHackMe, cd Hadoop, clear ls. There's my ID RSA file. Just verify. Yep, there it is. So python3.m HTTP server 80. We're gonna host that Python server again. Let's just name this web server just to keep things clear. If we go back to ZP and we can go to temp, we can host it there, and wget http 10.13.10.98 ID RSA. Oh, I need to learn how to do that. 10.98 ID RSA. And it's there. So we have to change the mod. I believe it's 600 in order for it to work properly. And the syntax for this. Now, if we were logged in as the root user, it should just work, right? Without having to manually specify the ID RSA. But remember, we are still our lowly ZP user on our initial bind shell. We've just been impersonating everybody else. We're definitely imposters. So the syntax, and we'll see if I remember this, if I do this syntax right, we're gonna SSH as root. And first we'll try it without specifying the port. We'll see if it automatically does it. And if it doesn't, we may have to specify the port. So we'll SSH as root at 172.23.0.4. And we will have to specify the ID RSA key, which it should be, I think we're in the temp directory, so we should be able to specify it that way, and let's just see what happens. Okay, so it's trying to connect over port 22. So let's try root at 172.23.0.4/i ID RSA -p for port. I believe 2122 is going to be the port running SSH on an uncommon port. Sudo terminal will not be allocated because CDN is not a terminal. Host key verification failed. What if we go like this?
Applies your shell before you can do it, maybe.
Yeah, let me just upgrade my shell real quick to Python. When I try to stabilize my shell, I always kill my shell. At least on here, I don't know. I know. I mean, it's not that big of a deal if I kill this shell. It's really easy to get this one back. Okay, I'm glad. Thank you, OneNote, for copy and pasting that so perfectly with a space. Let's try it now. 172.23.0.4 I ID RSA -p 2122. Yep. Just had to upgrade my shell with Python. Who am I? I am root, my friends. If I cd to root ls cat flag 10.text. There you go. We are the root user. And do we have this yet? Nope. Let's just try to.
If we try to SSH from that root SSH session now back to .3, technically there should be trust between the nodes. I think that might work.
Let's see.
Yeah, just IP config, see on which host you're now.
Yeah. Yeah, sure enough. So yeah, if we would have gotten...
Now you can SSH again to .4, so SSH inception just to prove that like it works if you were on .23.
Yeah, so we're just going back and forth. So you're right. If we would have gotten that root shell, it is that easy. You don't have to find the port. You don't have to specify the ID RSA key. You just SSH to it. That's awesome. Very cool. And our reverse shell's still chilling there trying to get something. Let's read through our conclusion. Congrats. I felt so good today when I when I actually made it to this point. You made it to the end and took control of the entire cluster. Some worthwhile notes on this lab. We cheated a bit here by having a single node in the main cluster, hence how I broke it. Usually you would have many nodes. This is actually fairly important since you have no control over which node MapReduce would select for your job, meaning you would get a randomized shell on node. This can become fairly annoying if you're trying to target a very specific host, but just executing a bunch of jobs will usually allow you to get lucky and hit the node of your choice. And Amoeba Man, I believe you were explaining that when you did the actual security assessment. That was the issue you guys had. You couldn't specify the node, so you just had to keep doing it till you got to the one you wanted. Is that correct?
Exactly. So you have no control. Yarn decides where those jobs are going to go. And then MapReduce sort of like takes the smaller tasks and it shoves it to different nodes. So you literally, as a user of Hadoop, even a super user, have no control over where those jobs are going to be scheduled. Of course, if you own Yarn, maybe you could have sort of like tweaked some stuff so that it has to select a specific thing. But it's way easier just to continuously spam jobs to the queue, and you're guaranteed to at least get a shell on the host where you want to get the shell. So that's been my trick so far.
That's great. That is awesome. All right, number 2, although the misconfigurations here were simulated, they replicate the real configuration usually seen when using Ambari as your data lake manager. Ambari? How do you pronounce that properly? Ambari?
I think it's Ambari, but I mean that's me guessing as well, so I might as well just be as wrong. So
so just say it with confidence. Ambari, we'll just go with that. It can secure your data lake for you, but you have to alter the config to allow it to do so. Number 3, a key misconfiguration in data lakes is not setting the appropriate UMask value for the data lake. This causes all pushed files to be world readable by default, which means you are in for a bad time if you start pushing sensitive content to your cluster. Interesting. Data lakes are often an all or nothing thing when they are Kerberized but don't have more granular access control. This means that any AD user can actually authenticate to the data lake and read files. This paired with the UMask misconfiguration makes for a very potent and large attack surface. That it does. It is not just the data that needs protection in the data lake, but the actual processing resources themselves as well. If you think GPOs are fast at mining crypto, you haven't seen what a bad actor can do using the distributed computing of a cluster with MapReduce optimizing those jobs. All right, so kids, don't try this at home. Don't try to hack Facebook's data lake. I'm sure they have better security, but some companies' data lake so you can mine Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin's losing in value, but I suppose if you mine enough of them, one Bitcoin's still like $20,000. I'll take that. I remember in 2012 when I first heard of Bitcoin, and it was cheap, but I thought it was a silly thing to buy. I think a lot of people are like me and they regret that. But lastly, thank you for completing this lab. You're welcome, Amoeba Man. Since you're the one who wrote this, thank you for hanging out with us and helping. We hope you enjoyed this journey of learning about the security shortcomings you will often see in Hadoop. There are a lot of services in the data lake, and this is just a sample of the misconfigurations you could potentially find with some of them. If you are interested, go spin up your own data lake and play around. Another excellent resource to learn more about Hadoop services and misconfigurations is the following Black Hat talk. I'm just going to pull this up in a tab so I can watch it offline. I did not watch this today. I bet that is a cool talk. Oh, my timer's going off. Well, we're just about done with this stream, so I'm going to just turn my timer off. I'll check that out offline. Complete. It's not going to say room completed because I'm not going to go back and redo all the other ones, but I have completed the room. It was a good room. And I terminated. So here is what I'm going to do. Once again, Amoeba Man, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for helping. This has been... The past 2 days have been a really good learning experience, doing stuff I've never done. and learning new things along the way. And I'm looking forward to the next AD room. Do you know when that next network is coming out, or is it kind of not up to you since it's stuck at the testing phase right now?
So we do quite a bit of like rigorous testing. I mean, my breaching 80 was tested for almost a month and a half with
Wow.
like different stress tests and everything like that. And I mean, you even saw with that one, we had to release 2 emergency patches to things that we didn't even see. So with the network of this week, I'm pretty sure it might launch today. We got the 2 OKs. We're just waiting for the final OK. So my hopes are on releasing that it will go out today. But again, they might decide to delay based on some of the test cases and everything like that. It's one thing to have a network where a QA team of like 4 or 5 people are testing the network, and then all of a sudden sort of ramping that up for the amount of users on TryHackMe is quite something. So
Sure.
we do try to make sure that the networks remain as stable as possible, but fingers crossed, hopefully today, otherwise early next week.
Awesome. And I just can't even begin to imagine. It's one thing to have a room, right? A single room, but to have a network all work together with multiple people trying to connect to it, like the complexity that's there is beyond me. It just sounds and seems complex, which I suppose is probably why for the longest time TryHackMe didn't do many networks, because up till now it was just Throwback, Holo, and one other one on there, Wreath or something. These are the first other networks that have come out. Am I correct on that?
Yes. So basically, my skill set is these type of networks and everything. To create them, I usually do it in my day job, where we do tabletop simulations. And one of the things that we do is we try to make those tabletop simulations a little bit more realistic, where it's no longer just sort of like a make-believe tabletop thing where you're discussing a potential scenario. We actually have a lab that the blue team tries to defend against. So there I learned to create, these type of networks and everything. So that's where it actually started. And then with TryHackMe, I think they also realized it could be beneficial to have a couple of networks. So we have a couple more that we have in store, and hopefully it's going to be good. But as I mentioned, it does take quite a bit of time, not necessarily the creation thereof. Creating the networks are actually fairly simple. The biggest thing is the stability. Because again, how many users are going to use them, that type of thing. So, I mean, that's why for these new networks, we went with something like SSH for the Windows boxes, because it's better than RDP. Those type of changes, I think all of them go quite a long way to make sure that these networks are as stable as possible and also future-proof. The amount of times passwords expired and that type of thing, and it's those type of things you only see when you test these things quite in depth.
Fascinating. Good stuff. Well, hey, for those of you on Twitch, for those of you on YouTube, once again, thank you for hanging out. Hopefully you found this as interesting as I have. It's not just me working through this, it's having Amoeba Man, the creator of these different networks, and a TryHackMe staff member guiding us through. And man, TryHackMe is awesome. If you don't have a TryHackMe account, get one. There's so much content just for free, but go ahead and get a subscription as well. I don't know if we plan on doing any more giveaways, but I know it was just recently in our Work Smarter Discord that we gave away a 1-year subscription to TryHackMe. I'm sure we'll do that again at some point in time in the future. So if you haven't already joined this Discord that you can see as I'm sharing my screen, come join us. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, if you look at the description of the video, you'll see a link to it. It's small, which I like. I think we're at maybe around 200 members on here. I think what sets us apart is every Monday evening at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, we have a meeting and we kind of answer 2 things. What did you accomplish this past week? And what are your specific learning goals for this week? And then we encourage people to share those goals in the weekly goals channel, just because there's something about written goals that help motivate us, that help motivate me, hopefully help motivate you, and to accomplish those goals. So if you're looking for a community of people to learn alongside of you, come join us. Whether your interest is in cybersecurity or system administration or a help desk, whatever it is, if you just want to break into IT, we have a good mix of students and professionals, good networking opportunities. We have staff from Microsoft, Amazon, apparently TryHackMe now as well. And me, I work at a bank, so I don't I don't have the sexiest job, but we have a cool team of people. Nate said one of us, perfect gif, perfect picture that showed up on stream. So once again, thank you guys for joining. I will say I am done streaming until Tuesday, so my nights to stream now are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I believe Nate is going to be on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, although Nate, I know this weekend is our 10-year reunion. Are you going to be streaming on Saturday night? Or are you going to be at the 10-year reunion?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll probably go to the reunion, then maybe ditch out early. I don't know.
Sounds good. So
might
Nate may or may not be on Saturday. Yeah, you have a good excuse. I'm not going to the reunion, so I'll be here, but I don't plan on streaming. So I will. I'll be back Tuesday, y'all. I'll also be online on Monday. I usually help lead those weekly meetings. So if you're on Discord, I'll see you on Monday. Otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday. Hopefully by Tuesday, we'll have Amoeba Man's new AD network, and we will begin on Tuesday working our way through that network. So once again, those of you on Twitch, YouTube, I'm going to cut off here, but thank you again for joining us. I will catch you guys next time.